Hello, hello. My name is Logan Brade. I am a developer advocate here for Ionic, specifically for the Capacitor team. And welcome to our untitled live stream. I promise we're coming up with an actual name for this thing, but we're also here to kick off Capacitor Month. And we have a whole month planned full of different activities. We're going to be doing live streams. We're going to be doing blog posts. We're going to be having talks with engineering staff, and hopefully we'll be talking to some of you in the community. But before we kind of dive into that, I have two friends here joining me. I have Dallas James, and I also have Connor Simmons. So why don't you guys introduce yourselves?
Sure, I'll go ahead. Hey everyone, so the name's Dallas James. I'm the product manager for Capacitor. Excited to come hang out today with Logan as we talk all things Capacitor, chat about Capacitor Month, and dive into our topic for later on.
Yeah, and hello everyone, Connor Simmons. May have seen me in a few of these, well not the live streams, but some of the webinars, but working on the product team and focused on Capacitor and get to hang out with Dallas and Logan all the time. And so excited to be here with everyone and talk all about the product.
Hey, welcome guys. Thank you so much for joining me. I know I'm kind of the new face in the room here. I just recently joined the Ionic team, and so this is my first live stream with Ionic, and I am super excited to be here and to talk about custom capacitor plugins, get to hang out with Dallas and Connor. This is going to be like a really laid back session. So please feel free to comment throughout the live stream, engage with us. We're watching the comments right now, and we're going to be, answering them throughout the entire thing. We kind of expect this to take about like 30, 45 minutes and just kind of go through it. But before we dive into it, we want to talk about Capacitor Month. So I'm going to ask actually Dallas and Connor here. So what exactly is Capacitor Month about?
Yeah, we're excited for Capacitor Month. So the idea is just to drive a lot of excitement around Capacitor and celebrate the fourth anniversary since the release of Capacitor 1.0. So that will have some more birthday celebrations for that later in the month. But the idea is just to celebrate Capacitor and everything that it does and all of its greatness, and really promote a lot of the content, a lot of the capabilities that you can do with Capacitor, and just get everyone hyped about it.
Oh, cool. So since we're doing this for a whole month, and obviously we want to engage people, we want to talk to more people, how can our communities be involved with Capacitor Month?
Yeah, I can take a stab at that one. So one of the best ways to be involved is to get engaged and join us for a lot of our live streams. Like you hopefully joined us here today, unless you're rolling this back on the recording. But yeah, get involved, talk with us, engage with our social messages. Let us know what you want to see, right? That's what we're here to do, is not only highlight the product and what it can offer you as a developer, but to help answer your questions. And so hopefully these live streams are going to answer some of your questions about what it can do. Hopefully some of the conversations in Discord with our engineers are going to help you get past those hurdles. Hopefully you're not having any, but if you do, they'll solve some of those problems. And yeah, just let us know what you need, and we'll try to answer it.
Yeah, and the good part is all of us are in the Discord. We're on all of the forums, pretty much all of our social media channels. So we're always available to kind of like chime in and help out, at least try where we can. And so I guess for the people who are watching this and like the community as a whole, what should they expect out of this month, and what should they expect from us going forward?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of content coming this month that you should be excited for. We've got several great blog posts lined up detailing all sorts of events with Capacitor. We have some Capacitor product launches planned for later this month, which we're excited to talk about. Every Friday, we plan to have Discord days, is what we're calling it, where we will have the Capacitor engineering team present in the Discord, and they'll just be hanging out in there to answer any questions. So if you're struggling with something related to Capacitor, check it out on Fridays. We'll have official dates and times posted later to the Twitter account, and the engineers will just be there to hang out with everyone. So between those, and then we have a few more live streams planned where we'll just jump on, hang out, have a good time together.
Oh, perfect. And then of course, like I said, and like everyone else has said, we really want engagement. So please, let us know in the comments, what do you want to see out of this? We plan on keeping this Untitled Ionic show going for quite a long time, where we're showing off projects, we're showing off like what you guys are doing in the community. Please let us know what you want to see so that we can create content that like works for you guys, shows off things that you want to see, and like helps you build like the really cool projects that you want to build. So I guess we should probably just dive into the project, right?
Let's do it.
Cool. Okay, so I'm gonna throw this up. And actually, before we dive in, it's probably a good thing to show off where you can find all this stuff. Let me pull it up here. So you can actually find all of the GitHub links and like the actual tutorial itself that we're going through at this URL right here. I know that is crazy, crazy long. So instead of you having to type it in, definitely use, I'm gonna take down our, there we go. You can definitely scan that QR code, and it'll take you to the actual blog post itself, where you can find all the details to the project. Hopefully that still works, but definitely let me know if it's not working, and we'll get it updated and we'll send it out to you guys. Okay, so let's dive in here.
Let's do it.
All right. So as I said, this is actually based off of a blog post. And so this one is called Creating Your Own Media Plugin for Capacitor. So I've always been a really big fan of like live streaming, video on demand platforms. And of course, they kind of consume everything we do, right? Like I love Disney Plus, love Netflix, Fubo for hockey, that type of thing. And I've always been really curious how they kind of make these applications and how they do it. And so I've spent like the last couple of years learning how to do video on demand and live streaming platforms. And I've actually built them in native applications. So I've done it in iOS, I've done it in Android, and I've done it on web. And what I kind of realized through that whole process was it is really complicated to create these types of media workflows and plugins and just like actually get them working on their native platforms. It takes a lot of engineering work. And what I kind of realized through this whole process was Capacitor itself is really powerful in being able to like allow you to create media rich workflows with a lot less effort than what you would do like having to create it natively. So I kind of went through this project. I'm like, I'm going to see if I can actually create like a pseudo live streaming video on demand setup and get it working with Capacitor plugin. But the challenge is with these types of applications is that essentially video streaming and the way that it works is really complicated, and that it doesn't work the same way on every single platform. Every platform kind of has their own competing technologies. So it almost makes it more difficult to try to like learn all of the different tools and trying to make it go for like multiple different platforms. So For me, I think the best way to do it is to just like use a technology called HLS. And that's like, if you've done any like media conversion, anything like that, it's a .m3u8 file. And with that, that's what kind of what allows all of these major platforms to do media streaming. So before we kind of dive into the code, I do want to show off one aspect of like how to get your video files into that format. It's not like super relevant to Capacitor, but in order to get it to work, you kind of got to get your media files into that format for it to work. So I'll show you kind of what I did. Let me bring it up here.
So Logan, while you're bringing that up, you said you worked on this for a Android and iOS projects before. Were you building something specifically?
Yeah, actually. So I worked for sort of a lifestyle company, and they wanted to make video as like a huge part of their kind of branding, being able to show off different videos. And so we were kind of challenged as an engineering team to like being able to create these types of platforms where they can share their videos and like show off kind of like who they are and what they offer as a company. And so me never working in video before, it's kind of daunting to dive into those like types of environments. And so being able to say like, hey, this is kind of how to do it, I figured it'd be a lot easier to show off like how we could make it happen.
That's really cool. I get the daunting feeling as you're starting to explain. I'm like, I don't know what we're doing yet.
Yeah, exactly. And it can be a lot sometimes, but we're going to go through it. So I'm going to kind of show off a little bit of the architecture here real quick. So first thing I did was I did a lot of this in AWS, like the actual media conversion piece. So I essentially had an S3 bucket. Sorry, talking to Mike. S3 bucket for input. So this is where I put my video file, and it was an MP4 file. And then I used a service called Media Convert. And so what happens is Media Convert reads that S3 bucket, does the conversion, turns it to that .m3u8, and I apologize for my handwriting because I know it's terrible, and then had an output bucket here.
I feel like I'm immediately back in an office, and I miss these whiteboarding days.
Yeah.
Right?
Me too. I definitely wanted to show this off because I'm like, this is really weird to talk about unless there's kind of pictures involved. Mm-hmm. But yeah, this is essentially how I did it. For those of you who are watching, what I want you to take away from this is that you just have to convert your video file. You have to make it a .m3u8 in order to do streaming video. And then you need a place where you can put it that is actually accessible to the internet. It has to be accessible to the world in order to watch it on your mobile device, which I know it seems kind of obvious, but when you're going through it, you don't always think about like, hey, what are the access rights to things and how can I like make this work? But yeah, so this S3 bucket is just open to the world. And if you open up the file or the project code, you'll see that there's a URL in there, and that's basically where this lives, is this this output bucket, right? So you as a person can access it.
Cool. That makes sense.
Cool. But let's dive into the actual code. I'm not going to be doing any live coding or trying not to, because we all know how that goes during demos. It doesn't always work out. But there are essentially there's two separate projects, technically three, but we're going to be jumping between our actual like web IDE, and then we're also going to be going into Xcode, because the other part of this is that we need to get it to work on our mobile app. By trade, I'm more of an iOS developer than I am any other kind of developer. So I'm going to use Xcode and get this into iOS. But the first thing we need to do is so I have the project here, but for you at home, you want to actually establish your project. So when you're creating your first Capacitor plugin, I don't know if there's a way I can zoom in on here. Probably not. So you want to actually put in the initialization piece into terminal to build your project. So you want to do npm init, your Capacitor plugin, and then it's going to go through and it's going to give you all these different steps, and it's going to ask you questions about your project. So for this one, it's just called Capacitor plugin video demo. You want to pick your directory, and then you also want to use your package ID. And it's going to be in a reverse domain notation when you're actually creating it. The name of the plugin, because the whole point of this is to essentially you're going to be technically they're assuming you're publishing this, right? So you want to like do things that are unique, that are like specific to your project, even if you're not necessarily sharing it. The assumption is that you're eventually going to put this in npm so other people can download it, because it is a custom plugin. Typically with custom plugins, you can, share them with the world. But yeah, and then you also want to put in like your GitHub information and then the description of what it's going to be. Once you have that, you're going to actually CD into your project, and then you're going to run the build. And so what that will do is that will actually create your entire project. So you'll kind of get what you see here, right? You'll see the actual resource folder. So it has all the definitions. This is kind of like the interface that allows you to connect to your plugin, the web implementation, and those kinds of details. So the first thing that you want to be able to do is go to, in my case, I went to the definitions file. And because I just want to play a video, I created this play video method in the interface. And this is, like I said, what kind of connects a lot of the pieces together and allows it to work. I'm not doing anything crazy. Basically, we're just passing in what the URL is to the video. And we don't actually need to return anything because we don't really need any information. In this case, we just want the video to play in our native application. And then the next part is we want to go to the web implementation. Actually, for this one, we probably don't need to do it. I added it just because with this project, I think the plan is that we're going to build it out over time. So I'm going to be adding in the actual Android piece to it later, and then the web piece to it later. And also, if you guys want to help out, it would be amazing if you actually dived into it and helped us kind of create this plugin to build out a tutorial for anyone else who wants to kind of look into it. But yeah, I did put in a stub for play video and the web implementation. And then the next piece.
I think something important to call out here, right? Like all of these methods are asynchronous, right? And that's because you're working over what is the capacitor bridge. So any communication back and forth there is asynchronous, so that, if something takes a while to process, you're not blocking your web UI, right? You don't want everything to freeze while you're working in your native layer. That kind of creates a poor experience. And so you'll see that with all of our definitions on the web and when we work with it, that it's all asynchronous communication here.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. You don't want things to lock up. And actually, when I was going through this the first time, I actually didn't use asynchronous anything. I just was like, okay, I'm going to try to create methods, see what happens. And sure enough, this actually locked up on me and it would not work at all. So make sure you're doing it as async and not like straight like functions like the way that I did. But then the good part is once that portion is done, we're going to kind of move away from my web IDE, and that's when we're going to start taking it into Xcode. But first thing, once that's done and everything's done with that, you want to do npm run build. And so what that'll do is when you run the build, obviously it'll build your application and make everything work. And then we want to get to the second portion of it, which is we need to create a test application. Because we can create a plugin here and obviously just show that portion of it. But the problem is that we want to show you an actual project that works. So we need to implement it in an actual Ionic project, not just necessarily a capacitor plugin application or project.
Yeah, plugins are their own project, which makes it really useful for working with them because you can open them up in your IDE and actually work with it. But then to test it, right, and I'm sure we're going to talk through this now, right? The best way to do that is to create another project locally, link it, and run them together.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And so what I did was I created the second project that I called video plugin test. And this is my actual Ionic application. And for this one, I used the commands Ionic start video plugin test blank. I did an Angular application because I'm really familiar with Angular. And then, of course, it's a capacitor project. And then, of course, there's kind of two ways to go about this. When it comes to bringing in your plugins, you can either publish them to NPM and then import them. I find that's a little dicey, not because it wouldn't work, but just because then you're making it available technically to the whole world to be able to do stuff with. And I feel like when you're kind of in that experimentation phase, you're kind of learning, you don't necessarily need to publish it to NPM. You just really want to make sure that your plugin locally works. And so for that, basically that's where we get into the NPM install and then the actual location of the plugin that was created.
Yeah, this is how the Capacitor team does all our development as well, right? We have our repo of all the open source plugins. Yeah, anytime we're doing development on them, we just install them into a project like this, and then you get that constant feedback loop. So as you build your plugin, it will automatically update in your existing project, so you can move really quickly.
Well, oh yeah, true. So like basically if they ever had to push it to NPM, they'd have to go through a whole build phase. Yeah. And that's when things get really kind of, I guess, more annoying than anything. And we don't want to create that experience, especially if you're trying to do development and you're learning. I know for me, when I was looking at it, I was like, okay, NPM, it's great. I love using it, but I also don't want to complicate a workflow when I'm trying to learn how to do my own capacitor plugin.
Yeah. NPM is great when you're ready to publish, you know.
Yeah.
You can share it with the world. You could do private NPM packages if you want to make something just for your company. And then you get the full power of versioning and semantic versioning, right? So that you can kind of control breaking changes for your applications. And yeah, there's a lot of great that comes with publishing to NPM. But yeah, for local development, just NPM installed to the directory and you're good to go.
Yes.
I was going to say, Dallas, can you explain a little bit about how you're linking the development plugin to the project? So it's just
Sure.
a separate command.
Yeah. So again, this kind of goes back to the plugins are their own standalone project. And because they're their own project, one of the powers of NPM, right, of that package manager, is we normally use it to install from the remote repository, you know, NPM install at capacitor core, right? And that pulls from the remote repository. NPM can also install locally, right? If you give it a path to a project that has a package JSON, it can just install from that directly. And so that's what we're taking advantage of here. If you want to, Logan, if you bring that command back up you had in your blog there.
Yeah.
So you can see here, right, we're still using npm install, but instead of just putting in the name, right, if we did npm install capacitor plugin video demo, that's going to go off to the registry and look there. Right. But because we have that path, right, the .. we're going to go up a directory.
Yep.
It's pointing to our plugin directory, and that will allow us to install locally. So that's one of the powers of npm, right? This isn't anything specific to capacitor. It's just something that we're able to take advantage of that really brings a lot of speed to the development process.
No, that's a super helpful tip. And like, I didn't know that when I was first kind of playing around with Cap plugins years ago. And I have my own public like test versions of capacitor plugins that are just available for whoever finds them. But this is a much better process.
Yeah, I have mine too. I'm sure if you looked at my npm account, you'd find some old, you know, cap test, and it's just an echo plugin back and forth.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so once that's done and you have your plugin installed, as you can see, you get like your actual import statement here with your capacitor, or you have to, you get it all set up, right? Like you want to get it set up in your application. But the main thing to check out is in your package.json folder or file, you'll notice that you should actually get, when you do that npm install, and you want to make sure you get this, is the actual plugin location. First time I was running through this, I actually ran into an issue where the npm install didn't work correctly. This did not show up, and it borked my entire setup. So, and then I had to kind of like run through all the steps again. But if you run through this, make sure that after you do that install command that you see it in your package.json file.
Does WebStorm have a zoom in on the font? I know VS Code's like Command Plus, but does WebStorm same thing?
Let's find out.
Just a little harder to see. At least
I'll figure it out.
Mac user of me. Maybe hit View and then top. Appearance. I don't know. Never mind. Carry on.
Yeah. Sorry about that, guys. I'll figure this out for the next time. I didn't realize that it looked so small. But of course, anything that's I'm talking about right now is in the tutorial. So if you can't see something, definitely go to the tutorial, and all of the instructions are there. But anyways, once we have that installed and everything set up, we want to be able to set up the front end part of our application. So for this, I basically use this wonderful code right here, and you can even copy and paste it. It's essentially just the title. It's video test, and then a button. When you press the button, it'll actually play the video on the app. So it's nothing crazy. It's nothing super exciting, but we just want to make sure that we can get videos to play, that it's actually reaching out to the endpoint and being able to play the video. And then once we kind of have the front end piece done, copy and paste it in, this is where we kind of get to the other piece of it. And that is where we actually have the play video like method that our button reaches out to on the front end. And so for this one, again, async play video, it accepts a string. And then we have like the actual wait. And then in this case, the capacitor plugin video demo plugin, and then the method that we created in the actual plugin, which is play video. So nothing crazy or exciting there. And of course, the code for that is also in here.
Nice.
That's probably better to show off than my screen at the moment. Look at it. There we go. Okay. Oh, and so then once you do that, we're pretty much ready to build this part of the application and actually get it set up for iOS. So the way that you would do that, you'd actually run through your build. So it'd be npm run build. You actually install the Capacitor iOS plugin. You got to make sure that you have it, or else any of the following commands afterwards won't work. And then it's cap add iOS. And then you actually have to sync your project, which the syncing of the project will allow it to actually be pushed to the other platforms. And then, of course, we want to open it in iOS. And in this case, well, open in iOS means open in Xcode. And when you run that, that'll then actually deploy all of the relevant details into Xcode. This one's going to get a little bit tougher potentially to see, so I apologize for that. But the big piece that we want to do is we want to create our method that is going to be invoked like on the iOS side of things. So for that one, it's going to be this code right here. So it's going to be this function play video that has, in this case, I hard-coded it in there. I probably shouldn't have, but you can actually connect this URL to the button, and then when people click the button, it'll actually push the video into the method and then actually play it. But this code is nothing crazy. In fact, this is actually what you'll find on Apple's documentation for getting videos to play in iOS, like when you're using Swift. And in fact, I have the whole file again in the tutorial, so you could just literally copy and paste this whole thing. One specific call out that's kind of different from what you'll find in the official documentation from Apple on like using AVKit and I do think it's just AVKit. Oh, and UIKit, is that there's this self-bridge view controller present. And so for that one, in the basic one, it's essentially you're just saying like, hey, view, show the player. But because we're dealing with the capacitor bridge portion of it, we have to add the self.bridge.viewcontroller.present. If you don't add that, capacitor actually won't, like the application won't actually know what to do with the video or how to present it. It'll just throw an error at you. And actually, when I was building this portion out, I actually ran into this issue where I didn't like connect to the bridge piece of it. And it definitely broke the application as I was going through it.
Yeah. So can we walk through a couple of parts and pull from your iOS background here?
Yeah.
So I don't come from an iOS background, right? I originally developed with Capacitor, and I built apps freelance before moving and joining the Ionic team several years ago. So let's just talk. I have a bunch of questions about why and how this works.
Yes.
So you have a couple imports at the top. Can you explain kind of what those are and why they're important?
Yes. Luckily, a good portion of them actually come by default. So that makes it a lot easier. So you don't necessarily have to like import a lot, right? Foundation, I believe, is default. Capacitor is default. Essentially, Foundation is all the libraries associated with anything like foundational to building an iOS application.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. And of course, Capacitor it's Capacitor. That's the way that we like have our plugins work on iOS. But the two that don't come by default is UIKit and AVKit. So UIKit is essentially the like user interface framework that basically builds your user interfaces out. Because there's sometimes you don't necessarily need to import that, but because we're instantiating something for the user interface and we're not using like the point and click interface that comes with Xcode or Swift UI, we're literally just building it all programmatically. We have to import it. And that mostly just comes from like the view controller piece of it. I don't actually think the rest of it even needs it. But then the other portion is AVKit. So AVKit is a really interesting library in the sense that this is what allows you to play videos, but it's there's a lot of feature-rich things that can happen in here. Not only is it like being able to play videos, if you wanted to create a music application that kind of used something similar, AVKit has it. If you want to be able to create full live streaming applications or video streaming applications, like for instance, a Disney Plus, and you want to be able to allow people to scroll through your videos and like show advertisements, do all those types of things. Like there's ways to do it using AVKit. So there's even like a monetization piece that you can learn from using AVKit.
Wow, that's really cool. There's a lot in there.
Yeah, and it's a pretty dense library. Unfortunately, it's not really well covered in the documentation, or it's like kind of more, how would I describe it? It's just, there's not a lot of information on how to use it outside of just playing videos. But the more that you dive into the documentation, the more you can learn about how to like create really crazy video applications and actually do more monetization stuff with it.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. So next question,
Yes.
line 22 here, your guard statement. What exactly is a guard statement? Because it kind of looks like a if else statement from what I'm familiar with from TypeScript land.
Yeah, it's just making sure that it's not empty. That's like the safe way that iOS does things. Because if you don't return anything, your application is going to really crash out. And of course, when you're dealing with end users, those types of crashes get logged. And we just we don't want to create a user experience that's not great if our application crashes because we don't have just a simple like string that's in there.
That makes sense. So like right now we have that string that's hard coded in there. Totally fine. Don't even need the guard. But if we were to replace that with our user input from the call, probably good to have to make sure we actually get a valid video URL.
Yes. And then a little bit of background of why I have it hard coded versus then like in the first part of the plugin, I didn't have it hard coded. There's a slight bug with the video simulator. And so when I tried to run the actual application and play the video wasn't actually playing in the simulator. And I thought it had something to do with the bridge of actually like passing the string from Capacitor to iOS. And I started realizing, no, it was actually more of an Apple issue. So I just hard coded it for now. But you should be able to actually pass that information across. I would just recommend I'm going to try to play around with it and update the tutorial and my version of the code. But definitely play around with it. I say give it a shot and see if it works. And if it doesn't, then it's just one of those things you have to kind of mess around with and figure out a better way to do it.
Okay. All right. So here's a hard question for you.
Yes.
Dispatch queue.main.sync. What the heck is that?
Yes. That is probably one of the most confusing aspects of doing any iOS development, but there are only specific threads that you can use when you're changing the user interface. That's what that is. That basically is just me telling my actual code, like, hey, use these threads to change the interface. Because if you don't have it, your application will crash, or it'll send you a really annoying message that says you can't do this. Like you have to do this on the main threads.
Okay. So because we're doing some sort of UI interaction, we're changing what the person is seeing. We have to use this dispatch queue to push this and run it on the main thread.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's more information to it than that. But honestly, like I don't even dive that deep into it. I just know that I have to have that in order to get this to show up on the screen.
Okay.
That's just kind of what I associate it to.
I bet for anyone who has further questions, come hang out on Discord on Friday, and I bet you could get one of the other Cap engineers to explain it even better.
Yeah, yeah, and they can explain it way better than I can. I like to play around and like create projects. Those guys really know their stuff. I just like showing off what I create.
Yeah. All right. Last question then for you.
Yes.
So we've created this method, right? Play video. How does Capacitor bridge that, right? We created the type definition on the web project. And as we created this function here, does it just know to link those up because the names are the same, or how does it actually link that function there?
Actually, so there is a file where we have to define that. Actually, I don't even think I really defined what file this code should be put in. So before we navigate away from that, it's going to be in the Capacitor plugin video demo plugin .swift file. It's really annoying. Apple and Xcode, they kind of removed the actual file extensions, and now they use like these little symbols. But if you see like the little bird symbol, that just means Swift. And in this case, we actually want to go to Capacitor plugin video demo plugin.m file. So that is this one right here, and it has that notation of that M. That's how we're going to know. But this is where like we really connected in iOS to get it talking, and it's the cap plugin method. And so I created play video. I have it returning a promise. I just looked this up. I don't know exactly if that's what it's supposed to be, but it didn't throw any errors, so we're just going to assume it's fine. But yeah, so that's basically the piece to make the button talk to iOS and then run our code.
Okay. So any methods we actually create in our TypeScript definition, this is the piece we need that kind of says, okay, we have a TypeScript definition. It's this name, and this is what it maps up to on the iOS side.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yep.
Cool. That makes sense. I think that answers all my questions.
Oh, perfect. I was going to say, Dallas, I don't know if I can go into more detail about this.
Maybe you should go to Discord days so that I can ask some questions. No.
Oh, maybe. No, it's always good. I always like talking to engineers and like learning from them because, I think we're all in a state of learning. And so I kind of take that mentality with any project. I don't really consider myself an expert. I like to dive into code. I like to try to learn new things. And you know what? Somebody has a piece of knowledge that I don't have. So it's good to talk to people who don't and be able to share more knowledge and kind of grow our community.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the point of these videos, right? Mm-hmm. Like, we're all just going to hang out and learn stuff together.
Exactly. We're going to make mistakes here. And I'm pretty sure I made some mistakes.
I need to go to these Discord days because it's been so long since I've been in any sort of like iOS project that like all of Dallas's questions, I was like, great question. I don't remember.
And it's constantly changing too. Like I think specifically on the iOS side of things, Apple does updates. Is it like every 90 to 180 days or something? And they're like every year they're pushing out, honestly, like a lot of code breaking things. So there's always new information coming out. And so it's really good to kind of check it out, stay up to date with it, and just ask questions because you're going to have projects that fail. And that's just kind of what it means to be a developer doing iOS things. The other thing I should mention about this project before I continue on. So what I'm doing is I am working with the actual plugin on our test project, and it's actually writing back to the Capacitor plugin project. So it's a little weird. It's a little Inception-y where we're all the changes that I'm making right now are actually changing in our Capacitor plugin project. And I think it might be worth showing off here. So if we kind of dive back into it, this is video plugin test. Here we go, Capacitor plugin demo. Okay, so all of these things right here, whenever we make changes in our code and Xcode, it is actually showing up in our web project as we're doing it. So you kind of have a choice. If you want to do it in your web IDE, you totally can. I just don't. I just use Xcode. But anything that you write back is literally, they're talking back and forth to one another and updating.
Yeah, that's that benefit of using the npm install for your local files, right? Is you've basically taken your package and you've pointed it at that location on your system. And so, yeah, all of these are actually just pointed at that location on your system. So you are updating your plugin directly.
Yes, exactly. All right, so there is one more piece that we have to do before we actually run our application and get this thing going. And this one is a little bit obscure. And honestly, this is just in the official documentation for using AVKit. It's not something that's really kind of out and about. But the thing that we want to work with, it's app delegate. Let's see if we can find it. Here we go. So it's going to be in our main app like project and our main app file, and it's app delegate. And at the first, you'll notice that there's a function called application. And in this, you actually have to do some audio configuration. And the code is basically this audio session, AV audio session, shared instance. And for this one, you're just basically defining how the audio is going to work when you play a video. I don't know, like even when I was going through Apple's documentation, they didn't even really describe like why you have to do this. You just have to do it in order to get sound to make this work. Or else you might get a video that won't play sound, or if you're trying to share it across like different things, like if you're trying to do what's it called, like share playing, or if you're trying to do like any sort of casting to Apple TV or other Apple devices, it might mess with the audio if you don't add this section in. I did not have any problems not having it, but because the documentation recommended it, I added it and I left it in there.
This is something to do. I mean, this is me, not having developed in a while, but like creating just like a single instance, or avoiding like making multiple instances and getting confused, creating audio over audio over audio. Like, I don't know. I feel like that's got to have something to do with it.
Yeah. Well, and you know, there's going to be times where if you have video, you're not always just going to be watching it on your phone. And I think that's kind of what it is, right? Like you could send it to Apple TV if you wanted to. You could send it to your laptop. And so when you're trying to do that, or even share play, like if you have, you know, created something in your application where you want to be able to share the video that you're watching with your friends so that you can watch it at the same time, you have to define like how the audio is going to be split and how things work, so that not only are you just sharing it, like the video itself, but then the video knows how to deal with whatever instance you're trying to share.
That would make sense. I wonder if it's like, I know iOS doesn't necessarily have this distinction, but I know on Android, right, you specify like the output channel, and then there's different volume controls for the different output channels. And part of me wonders if this is somewhat related to that. Like, you know, you've specified that mode of like movie playback, so it's bound to that specific output audio channel.
Yeah.
But again, I'm spitballing. I don't know. Maybe I'm lying to everybody on stream right now.
Hey, you know what? Me too. Like I said, they don't always talk about in the documentation like what these things mean. They're just like, oh, you need to have it. And so there's a little bit of an experimentation piece where we have to dive in and figure out, okay, what does this actually mean and what is this actually doing? And for this test case, I didn't really need to go beyond that level of knowledge. But, you know, like if you're building an application, anyone who's watching this, if you're doing something with SharePlay or you're doing a more advanced use case, then you probably will have to dig into this and like really understand like what's happening from an audio perspective where you have to do this.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But once you have that, you're actually good to go. So you can actually share your application. I know we've like gone through for the last 40 minutes and really shown off what this is doing. But I will show you guys live here what is happening. Let's get this up. And QuickTime.
Right. I'm excited to see it run.
Yeah.
Oh, me too.
Demo gods be good.
I know. We got to make sure that the demo works. iPhone. Hey, there we go. Okay. So okay, cross your fingers, guys. It does take a minute for it to actually pull up and run. There you go.
Nice.
So
Okay.
that's our basic interface. We had our like little title thing. We have our button. Now we actually got to test to see if video plays. So let's go through and play video. There it is.
Hey, look at that.
Yep. It's
Easy
very
peasy.
own mic, and you can actually flip it around and it'll adjust the video size,
Nice.
do all that. There's even options to share it to different screens as well. So as you can see, try to get it up right there. So you have different sharing options as well. So you get the full utilization of everything that you could do with a normal like Apple device and be able to run it.
Nice. It's looking really good.
Yeah.
I like Mike's comment. I relate. He said, "Demo gods strike me down even when I'm demoing to myself."
I know that's the fun part of it, right? Is trying to actually run the application and make sure that nothing goes wrong. And actually, I did have one other thing with this demo that I wanted to show off. It's a little maverick. We're going to see if it works, but and I haven't honestly tested it in this. So
Now we're demoing.
I know now I'm tempting the demo gods on this. So we're going to really see if it works. But this live stream is not only going to YouTube where you guys are watching it. I actually created my own endpoint where I am streaming this too. So I use the service called IVS from Amazon. It's like a white label version of Twitch where you could take your live streams and be able to like embed the player into different like applications if you wanted to. And so for this, let's see if it's actually running. And again, it might not work. It might work. We shall see.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, fingers crossed for sure.
You sacrifice 3 Cordova apps so it works.
Yeah. Come on, play. Hey, it is working. Okay.
All right,
So what we're going to
good.
do is that we actually have a URL here. I can't show this because this has all the streaming information for it. So don't need to get that hijacked. But we're going to update our code here.
You don't want us putting stuff on your dime.
Yeah, we definitely don't want things popping up during our live stream. But we're going to go back to our actual Swift capacitor plugin video demo plugin, and where I had that URL like hard coded, we're actually going to pop in the new URL for this and see if our live stream now that we're running will actually show up in here.
Streamception.
Yeah. I hope it works. I mean, if it works, it'll be pretty cool, but I don't feel like tempting the demo gods is a good way of
Stream within a stream. Got to go
Yes.
deeper. You have that Inception music queued up? I'm
Yeah.
ready.
Yes. I wish I did, but I don't.
So real quick, while that's building, there was a comment in the chat from David Schmidt asking, whenever I see anything that says Cordova, I get frightened. I've always wondered what the Capacitor Cordova pod does. The Capacitor Cordova pod is what provides the backwards compatibility so that you can use Cordova plugins inside of your Capacitor project. That's all that it's used for. So if you have no Cordova plugins, it's not used at all, but it's there in case you need to add some legacy Cordova plugins that, you know, a lot of people still rely on. So that's what it's for. Nothing to be too scared of.
I know. I think the big thing to say is don't be afraid of code. You know, like things are going to break. You're going to just experiment, learn from it, and don't hesitate. Like I know I can speak for me personally. I break things all the time, and I feel like if you're not breaking things, you're not really learning how to do something. And I just overall think it's good to get rid of the mentality of like we have to be perfect. No, we just have to code. We just have to like figure it out and learn how to do it.
Show up in these live
Yeah,
streams
hey.
and watch us embarrass ourselves.
Wave to myself, maybe.
Oh,
There we go.
In the future.
So my little test worked.
Oh, it's a little laggy, but that's cool.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
I think on purpose, right? It's like,
Oh yeah. So this, like our video, this is literally getting pushed from like our streaming application to AWS. Then it's going through transcoding, and then it's getting put into a video, and then it's getting delivered. So there's like, there we go. There's our inception.
Yep.
we
I'm
have
sorry.
full mirror effect going on right now.
That's great.
But there we go. That's it. It worked, and I'm happy it worked, and the demo gods didn't strike me down yet
That's
today.
awesome. Very cool. I think we should definitely keep working on this. I feel like there's a lot we could do. Maybe we could.
Yes.
I don't know. Some of the thoughts that come to my head is it would be really interesting to try to expose some controls, right? Like play and pause to the capacitor application, or I don't know. I mean, you see, it comes up in the full screen video, so maybe we could do like a half screen video.
Yeah.
I don't know. Some
Yeah.
random
Well,
ideas
even just
there.
like instead of hitting a button to go to a video, like actually have it play when you maybe scroll on top of it. Like that would be
cool.
That'd be a really useful feature and something that like other applications utilize with this video file format. So, I was talking about the monetization piece. I think this is a really important thing to learn, is being able to monetize like your creations. This video type allows you to inject advertisements into it. That's why like I specifically picked HLS. So like if you as a developer like are creating content and you want to try to get advertisers to play, different ads on your videos, this is like, there's ways to do that within this framework to make that happen, or even like as you're doing the encoding or the transcoding of the video to make that work. And so being able to add those portions to it, at least on the front end, to be like, hey, this is how I do, it's called client-side ad insertion. So if you want to do client-side ad insertion, there's a way to legitimately do that through the AV Kit framework. And it'd be nice to show off. And then any of you viewers can monetize your videos and monetize your applications.
That's awesome. Very cool.
Yeah, I'm even thinking about past apps that I was trying to do, and like the social media apps like you are browsing today, right? Whether it's Twitter, LinkedIn, just scrolling, and how all these things are like auto playing, auto pausing. If you have like settings shared where you don't want to mute, the videos anymore, and that kind of persists throughout like your scrolling, and so it pauses and replays the next video in the feed. Like seeing all that like through these demos, I think would be super cool.
Oh yeah, queuing a video. That's a thing that's an AV Kit, so you can definitely make that happen.
It's really cool. We should definitely tell people then. Tell us what you want to see in the comments.
Yeah.
You got something, a direction you want us to take it, because we'll be doing this. That we love the idea of doing these like hack streams, and for as much as we're kicking it off with Capacitor Month, we'd love to keep going beyond Capacitor Month. So the more content ideas, the better, and we'll just come and hang out and hack and build something.
Well, yeah, and I think the beauty of Capacitor is that you could literally interface to anything that you want to interface with. Like you're not just limited to, you're only limited by your imagination to come up with things. Like this video thing, when I first saw it, I'm like, video is perfect for Capacitor. This makes life easy when you're doing video applications. It takes a lot of the complexity out of it. And you're really only building your interfaces once. You don't have to do it through 3 separate platforms to make it work. And even things like being able to like interface with electronics. Like if you do any of your Arduino, Raspberry Pi type projects, I could see a capacitor application working for those types of projects too. I don't know how exactly it would work, but just conceptually speaking, I've like started playing around with that, and I think it could actually work. So it's just kind of like figuring out like how you want capacitor and your applications to interface with those projects.
Very cool. Well, I'm excited to see where we get to take it in the future.
Yes, I am too. But I think that's it. Does anybody in the comments have any questions? We've got about like, I think seven minutes left. I don't know if there's...
I think we just had the one, and lots of people saying presentation mode on your...
I know. I'll do it. I'll figure this out. So in all fairness, this is my first live stream with our with this live streaming tool that we're using. So I'm still learning how to use it. I typically use a different one, and so I borked the code aspect of it. So I really apologize for that, and I will make sure to test it next time so that everybody can see what's happening. I thought I made my screen big enough where I wouldn't have to adjust the sizing, and it's just escaping me.
Jonathan snuck one in there. Dallas, you want to talk to that?
What was it? What was that, Connor?
Jonathan asked a Cap 5 release date.
Oh, release dates. Okay, here's the thing. So I do have a release date, but I don't know that I can say. A lot of it depends on how testing. Yeah. So soon is popping up there a couple of times. Very, very soon. So we mentioned at the beginning there's lots of product launches we expect to see for Capacitor. that may or may not, and by may not, I mean definitely will include Capacitor 5. So it's coming. Yeah. So just keep an eye out. Keep an eye on the blogs. You'll see a blog come up in the ionic.io/blog page as soon as we launch that, and it will be available for everyone to use. But we're really excited to get that out and get that into everyone's hands. We got a lot of great stuff coming for Capacitor this month. We're excited to share it all.
Absolutely.
Very cool. Well, if we don't have any other questions, I really appreciate you guys being here. Dallas, Connor, this definitely helped the live streaming process through, and like you guys helped me walk through my code. So I really appreciate you being here. And of course, everybody who's watching, I really appreciate you guys watching this, and definitely let us know what content you want to see. And, we look forward to seeing you guys in the future.
Sounds good. Thanks for having us on, Logan. Appreciate it.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Take care.
All right. Later, y'all.